You ready to do this, Steve?
Let's do it, Spence. Punch it, Chewie!
Welcome, super friends, to the Fortress of Nerditude podcast. Safe place to talk about all things in nerd and pop culture. I'm Spencer Stapleton, and my co-pilot, as always, is Steve Madura.
Welcome home, guys.
We're two best friends that, despite being fathers and husbands, we just refuse to grow up. Thank you for joining us. This is episode number 28. And, of course, we release every Thursday mooning. Every Thursday mooning, Steve. Did you know that?
I've seen enough of that moon that I don't need any more, especially on a weekly basis.
Every Thursday morning, you can catch us on iTunes, Google, and now Stitcher. If it's a normal mooning, you can still download us on iTunes, Google, and Stitcher.
You can get that on Stitcher?
Apparently, it's streaming. You can stream my moon. I got nothing there. Anyway, this week is special because Britta is back in the house. What is up, Britta?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Woohoo!
I'm doing well. How are
I am
you?
Fantastic.
Great. It's awesome to be back.
So, Britta, since the last time you were here, we've decided we're no longer talking to our friends anymore. We've decided that since this is the Fortress of Nerditude, we have super friends, which seems a little more appropriate. And I gotta say, you're like the OG super friend of this podcast, being that you're my wife, and you've been here since the very beginning.
Nice. I don't think I've ever been an OG anything. So I'll take it.
You're an OG.
In California back in the 90s, you could have run with
Does that make
Tupac
me
and
super
Ice
cool
Cube.
now?
Oh, yes. A decade ago.
Sweet.
Right. So anyway, glad to have you. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Britta, you know how this goes. Start us off. How have you been? What is going on?
Let's see. So we've been busy. First of all, I have to say to my wonderful husband, whom I love so very much and who is amazing, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Today is
Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary.
Yeah, today is our eighth anniversary. We've been married for 8 years now.
We call it the Ocho in the business.
The Ocho.
Oh my gosh.
Anniversary, the Ocho.
So, anyways, it's been 8 awesome years. So, I love you, Spence.
Thanks, Britta.
Yeah,
I love you too.
Telling all your super friends. So we didn't really get to do much for our anniversary. We're not really good at planning that kind of a thing. But we did happen to go out this last weekend. Went on a double date with Spencer's brother Josh and his wife Steph. And we got to have a babysitter come and everything. It was great. And we went to the movies and we got to see the new Wonder Woman movie that just came out.
That's right. We did.
Nice.
Yeah. And I gotta say, I loved it. I'm not gonna do a whole review or anything because maybe that'll be a movie club down the way, but I really loved it. I was pleasantly surprised and just thoroughly entertained. And I totally teared up like 3 times during that movie.
Now, let me just ask this really quick. Was it because you related? Was it like the kind of a woman, like you saw a woman empowered and stuff? Was that it? Or was it just a great movie by itself?
No, I
or
think
was it
was
the buttered popcorn got in your eye? Because it could have been that.
The lemon
probably could have been
juice
that. Yeah, I suppose.
from the lemonade.
We're just, Chris Pine, who doesn't love watching him. But,
Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary.
Touche.
no, I think it was just a really great movie. Like, it was great to have a superhero movie who had a female lead, but, like, it was just entertaining. Like, it was funny, it was action, it was, like I said, emotional. Like, it just had everything. Like, I was very impressed, especially with some of the DC fails that have happened lately. This was
Womp womp.
really nice.
That's awesome.
So, there you go. That's what we did.
Very, very true. I'll just interject here, if I may, for a moment. It is our 8th anniversary, and I've had a few people today say, "Oh, what are you guys doing for your anniversary?" I was like, "We're podcasting, and we're super excited about it," which is awesome.
Yay.
But yeah, we did go out and see the movie. I just want to add, Britta, to what you said about the last 8 years. It's been wonderful. It's been amazing. I'm so happy that we're doing this together, and I don't mean just podcasting. I mean the marriage. So. Anyway,
Okay.
I love you, and thanks for putting up with me.
Anytime.
I don't say that enough. Thank you,
No, you
for
don't.
putting up with me.
I feel like I gotta like unplug the headphones and go in the other room or something. My gosh, guys. About a lovey-dove going. I got the waders on. I'm kidding. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
Now, switching back.
Carrie, I love you.
Yeah, nice try,
letting her
Steve.
She's like asleep.
She's been in bed for like an hour. She's not listening.
And she ain't gonna
Wonder
listen to this
Woman.
podcast.
Right, that's why you're fine. She doesn't know about your girlfriend we talked about last week.
Oh gosh.
Oh my.
Not
Get me in
true.
trouble.
Not true. It doesn't happen. Ever. I promise. Wonder Woman was really good. I really, really enjoyed it. I don't want to talk about it right now, really, because I've got something in the works. We've talked about our good friend Bobby Pauls. We're trying to work out when we can get Bobby Pauls on the podcast at the Nintendo Gurus on the Twitters. Bobby is a big DC guy, a big Batman guy, and we want to talk some DC because we haven't talked about it a lot recently because DC's been struggling, and now they just came out with a movie that was excellent. So we really got to get into the whole DC thing. So Bobby, I know we've talked, but man, this is the shout out. Let's do this thing. Let's get this together, and let's get talking, man. Anyway, Britta, jumping back, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about for your kind of week update?
Nope, that's pretty much all I have to say right now. I'm sure I'll chime in when you talk about stuff. So
Okay. So, Steve, how are
Yes.
you, my friend?
I'm great. I'm fantastic. The weather in Chicago has finally turned glorious. So it's been like 80s and 90s, and this past weekend the pool opened up, and we opted this year to get pool passes instead of Six Flag passes, which I think was good. You know, we kind of overdid it, I think, a little bit on the old roller coaster thing last year, the past 2 years. So we went to the pool this Saturday, and it was awesome. Like it was good to just get in the pool with the 4 kids and getting them swimming around and playing a little basketball thing. We play basketball and doing the diving board and all the rest. But I kind of get in this space sometimes as a dad. I don't know if you do this as well, but like you feel the need to like impress your kids and show them how like young you are and how like, daddy can do that. And you want them to be like, my dad was so young and cool, he do all this stuff with me. So it was adult swim time. So they blow all the whistles, all the kids got to get out. So my kids are like sitting along the edge, like, Daddy, do some cool dives, do some cool things off the diving board. I'm like, you bet you bottom
no.
I will, you know? So they're like, do a really high dive, you know? So I go like on the, there's no high dive. It's just a regular, regular diving board, but I go and I do this huge big dive and I go way up and then I come straight down and my shorts came halfway off my pants. And I'm like, good golly.
No, wait. They came off when you were in the air?
No. Sir, you can never ever come back to this pool again. This is a family place. This is a safe place.
In my mind, I see like as an Olympic diver, you go out there, you take the big strides with their long legs where they point their toes, and then you make the big bounce, and just as you bounce down, your shorts go to your ankles, and then you go up. No, that's what I'm thinking.
It was well in the water, and there weren't like tons of people like watching just me, but like I come up and Addison was like, Daddy, did you? I'm like, shh. Not a word. And so then I go to the next one. Like, Daddy, do a big cannonball. And so I go to do this cannonball, but I like misjudge the bounce syncopation of the whatever. And you know how like sometimes when you're on a trampoline and your like knees give out and you're just like
buckle.
Right? And so it buckled, my like right leg buckled, and so I like flew off like sideways, like towards like the wall, and the lifeguard had to like blow his whistle at me and be like, sir, please just dive straight off the board. I'm like, I didn't mean to do that. Like, oh, it was not good.
Well, at least your kids will remember what you did when they were little.
Right? My daddy sucked.
Right.
Anyway, so, but I redeemed it. I finally did the last one, and I did this great dive, and there wasn't even a drop of water spread. It was like the Conehead movie. You remember that when they go do the dive? It's like right into the water. So
Very nice.
anyway, so it was good to get out there, but so I wanted to start doing some laps as well, because I was supposed to do, as I recalled, and nobody called me out on it thus far, so I appreciate you guys not doing so, but I'll call myself out. I was supposed to do this Tin Man marathon thing, triathlon this weekend.
Yeah, the Iron Man thing you were going to do.
Yeah, I crapped out on that. There was actually, well, no, but I legitimately had a responsibility to clean the church at 7 a.m, which was at the same time of the start time, so I had to fulfill my church responsibility. So, but I had one of my son's friends that was like, my only goal was to beat Mr. Madura. I'm like, you little. I'm like, I'm sorry, you'll have to wait till next year when I'm slower and fatter and older.
Wait, so did this kid show up?
Oh yeah, he did it.
So-
He did it in an hour and 19. His mother texted
So he
me.
beat you because you lost by default by not showing up.
It was like the T-ball games, and they're like, we forfeit.
You're like, we're up 25
So-
points. Let's invoke the slaughter rule.
Yeah, I was called out by a 9-year-old, and I didn't show up at the bike rack after school.
Right? You're like, this kid's kind of scaring me. He's got this mean mugging look on his face, and he's giving me the stank eye.
He has like a whole bodysuit like the Olympians did, a few years ago in the Olympics. I'm like, I'm not that professional. My suit barely stays on my body, so right. I'm gonna go clean the church.
My knees give out, and I go sideways.
Any kind of gyrations can really affect the joints in my body. So anyway, so that was my weekend. Age is upon me, and 40 is just around the corner. Oh, the Tin Man needs oil. Let's just say that much.
Yes. My week was really good. Today was interesting. I'll jump to today and then I'll go backwards in time. Today, the air conditioning in my office stopped working. And by about like 1:30 in the afternoon, it was almost 90 degrees in the office. And thankfully, since I work IT and I work for a bunch of individual clients, I was like, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm going to go over to one of my other clients' offices and just set up on a round table and make myself a little spot because I was doing work for them anyway. And so that's what I did to avoid the heat the rest of the day. I'm anticipating tomorrow's going to be more of the same. Go in the morning, sit in my normal office space. It'll start getting warm, and then I'll just bail and go somewhere else until the AC gets fixed, which I don't know when that'll be. But that was today. On Sunday evening, yesterday, we took the boys outside, and the day before on Saturday, we took them down to Toys R Us, and we let them pick out bike helmets because they've got these, what they're called, like balance bikes they got for Christmas that are bicycles with no pedals. And so basically they sit on the bike and they kind of like use their feet to kind of like scoot along the ground, and then they just kind of zoom around, and it's supposed to help them like learn how to balance. But then they can put a foot down if they're going to fall out of balance. So they get used to balancing in a safe environment where they have greater control. And then apparently that means that when they transition over to a regular bike, they'll transition to a regular bike with the pedals without having to use the, training wheels.
Training wheels.
Britta did all this research on this, and she's like, this is a great idea, and, blah, blah, blah. And my mom bought them for, Britta's mom bought them for Christmas, yeah. And I was like, yeah, okay, or we could have just, got the kids bikes with training wheels like we learned how to ride. But she says that there's all this science, so we took them out, and we got the bikes all kind of set up. And then basically the boys just kind of bow-legged walked these bikes with the bike underneath them. So like their hands are on the handle, their butts are above the seats, and then they're just kind of like bow-legged walking these things. They're like, look, Daddy, I'm on my bike. And I was like, yeah, that's what we're calling
day.
it. Sure.
We told them they have to practice to learn how to ride them. So they're practicing. They'll figure it out. I have faith.
It's called the John Wayne bike.
Yeah, they were super excited to get on the bikes and have the helmets on and do the whole thing. And then I was like, we just kind of missed the idea of what this is supposed to be.
Kind of just walking around.
Yeah.
Really? That's what you're doing.
But
with the helmet on.
If it gets them used to holding the handlebars, and like when Charlie would stop, he would kind of sit down on the seat, and then he'd try to balance, just stay, into standing still position. So maybe that'll help some, but we're going to take them out more and do that more with them, and hopefully that'll kind of kick in. But the funny thing was, we came back home, and we took the helmets off, and their hair was plastered to their scalp, just soaking wet. Because, of course, it's like 85 degrees out, and they're wearing a helmet for like 45 minutes, and we get in, and Britta and I were discussing how we should towel them off, or if we should take them in and put them in a bath. And Britta says something like, hey, maybe Spence, we should just go get a towel for them. Now we're standing in the kitchen, and Charlie looks at his mom, then looks right next to him, and he looks at the oven, and there's a towel hanging on the handle. He just whips the towel off the handle of the oven, and then just starts rubbing it on his head. And I was in tears. I was laughing. I was like, well, we did just say a towel he could use to wipe down, and he took the first available towel next to him. It was just so funny. Just the sheer ingenuity, I'm going to take this and that's it.
And he was proud of himself. Look, I toweled off my head, Mommy. Yeah. Way to go, bud. Good job.
So he broke out in a profuse sweat from the waddle, the straddle waddle?
So the helmets, though, the helmets that we got them, so they're these big, BB-8 helmets, right? So they're this really big, not kind of the traditional shape, but they're a little bit big.
With
so
no
they
air
have,
holes?
Yeah, so they've got these.
Right.
No, it has vents on it, but the inside has this extra padding that's that you can remove with Velcro, so you can use it when they're little, when their heads are smaller, and then transition to when they're older. And so that padding, that foam padding that's in there, it's just foam, sitting on their
further
head.
insulation.
Yeah, so it looked like someone
an
just
orange
poured
and a
water on them.
toothpick.
Poor kids.
Oh my goodness! The smell of those things in a few months.
Oh,
Ooh,
right.
doggy.
Luckily, I can pull it out and wash it. It's great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome that you got them BB-8 helmets, because again, Spencer has a Enterprise pizza cutter.
So right, we gave them the options. There was BB-8, Spider-Man, there was Thomas the Train, there was Mickey and the Roadster Racers, and there was also Paw Patrol.
Lightning
there was
McQueen, too.
And Lightning McQueen, and there were some various ones that had little spiky stuff on the heads, but I think they were for older boys. And Charlie picked out the BB-8, and Jackson picked out the Thomas the Train. And then when we got home and we tried to actually put the Thomas the Train on Jackson, he freaked out and was like, no, I want BB-8. I was like, I knew that was going to happen. I should have just bought him the same one.
Also, that one was pretty tight on his head because, let's be honest, out of our two children, he's has
got a
the
blocky
Stapleton head.
Yep, he's got a big blocky head.
Let it be known. Let it be known.
Stapletons have huge heads.
Lots of brains we have to contain. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What
Or
size
thick skulls.
fitted hat do you wear, Spence?
7 7/8, which is
Pretty
the
much
second
has to
from the
special order them.
largest. No, I don't have to special order them. Let's be honest. I'm not calling the manufacturer directly and I'm like, hey,
Yeah, but how often can you find one in a store?
well, that's a different story.
Right.
He's one of those guys that would wear the strap hat, and they'd have to you couldn't even connect the two. It would just be the two plastic flaps hanging there in the wind.
Listen, size 8 is the largest. Size 7 7/8 is the second largest, and that's what I have to use.
And that's with
The
no
silver
hair on
of
his
big
head.
heads.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
I also have no hair as insulation or padding. If I had a head of hair, I probably would have to call the manufacturer directly.
8 1/8? Do you have that?
Actually, I've heard guys that have real big heads that wear 8s. They'll just take some scissors and kind of cut the band a little bit to stretch it. So
Yeah,
You got big and tall for heads.
that's not me though. I'm a normal size 7 7/8. I usually have to order online though because they don't carry that in the store. That's true.
Never in the store.
Oh, good.
Or it's my right, they will have a 7 7/8. Here's the real problem. I never get a 7 7/8 in my team. Bulls, Bears, Blackhawks, Cubs. None of those teams. But if I show up and it's oh, hey, we've got a Packers hat and a 7 7/8, I'm like, and I just turn around and walk out. Or if they're hey, we got a Cardinals hat, Nope, same thing. Or we got a Red Wings hat, same thing. Or hey, we got a Pistons hat, turn around, same thing. I'm just like, nope, I'm out. That's always what happens. I always find the hat size I need, but it's always like the rival of like my teams. And there's no way I'm paying good money for that crap.
Only to burn it.
Right. We actually have someone like down the street by our daycare that's got a big like Packers mailbox. It's all like ghettoed out, and I hate to say, but like I always think, a baseball bat would do that thing wonders.
I gotta find some kids who have some time on their hands.
Hey, kids, here's $5. Go bash that in, will you?
You hire a hitman for your neighbor's mailbox? That's awesome. You meet under a viaduct somewhere at midnight. You're like, here's the job.
Anyway,
that's awesome.
So good weekend. Got to go out on a date night for the anniversary, obviously, and then today's the actual day, and we're recording, and we're happy to be here in the Fortress of Nerditude with all of our super friends and the OG super friend Britta. So,
OG, what
up?
Anyway, that's my week in a nutshell. To say the least. All right, guys.
Very cool.
What do you say we get to the old Rebel Intelligence?
Let's do it right here, right now.
We're still talking about Rebel Intelligence, right?
Right, yeah.
I mean, Britta is
happy anniversary.
All right. So,
I love like the Marge Simpson that was awesome, Britta. I will show my disdain.
I always have to let you know, many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Rest in peace, you Bothans.
So, Britta, since you are our reoccurring guest, how about you start us off for Rebel Intelligence?
All right. So, this last week, Pandora opened at Walt Disney World, which is the Avatar
streaming music app.
Yeah.
I think
a bracelet with lots of little things on it. Yeah. No, the Pandora, the World of Avatar at Walt Disney World in Florida opened up, and it's getting really great reviews from a lot of people. It's I've listened to some podcast reviews of people who've gone. I've seen a couple vlogs of people who've gone and talked about it, and everything that everyone keeps saying is that it's a completely immersive world, and it's like, even if you don't love Avatar, which, I mean, it's been how long since Avatar came out, and people kind of forget about it in general anyway. But even people who were not fans of the movie, weren't huge fans, just think this world is amazing. It's incredible. Apparently, like, they have special food for there and, like, things you can buy. But the biggest thing is the headliner ride that they have. It's called Flight of Passage. So I don't know if you remember in the movie, the guy has to connect to one of the whatever flying things. I don't remember what they're called. And then he flies or whatever. So that's basically what this ride is. It's kind of like a motorcycle ride vehicle that kind of straps you in a little bit, and you are like in this thing flying.
Is that the scene where like he has to like make some sort of like love to it, and like their tails have to like connect together or some weird thing or something like that? Is that what you're talking about? Is that like what I'm remembering? Kind
of, yeah. Like it's whatever they have their connection thing that's like in their hair or something, but it connects to like the same sort of thing in one of these flying things that honestly I can't remember the names of. And they bond. You bond with your whatever it's called. I'm so terrible. Some people are yelling at me going,
interspecies bonding.
Jeez. Come on, guys.
Okay, so here's my thing, Britta, about this, and
yes,
I get that. Like, I get that they're saying like this immersive world. It's this amazing environment. I think I even saw something on that said like it's even better at night because like the lights come off and like
everything
there's like a lot of
glows.
Like bioluminescence. Yeah, and things glow.
It looks really neat.
I get that. Like it does. Like I did see some pictures. It does look cool. My problem with this whole dang thing is that they're doing this whole world based off a movie that like literally is fallen off and like completely out of like the public lexicon as far as like, pop culture references or like, it's not in the zeitgeist of pop culture anymore, if that makes sense, right? Like
Nice reference.
It's just kind of
supposedly there's supposed to be some sequels that are supposed to come out.
They've got 3
eventually
sequels
someday.
coming out. Yeah,
Right.
and we've kind of talked about that. They keep getting pushed back.
Yeah.
But I think what really drove that movie was it was the first time 3D had been done better than like the old 1960s
Sure.
little, red and blue, glasses that you wear. And it was filmed kind of in a revolutionary 3D style, which now is everywhere. Everyone can do that now. And so that kept a lot of people going back saying, you gotta see it, it's amazing. But the story wasn't great at all. Like for me, I'm just speaking from experience.
Right.
I thought the story was super weak. It was really like an overplayed trope. So why would Disney like not put all that money into developing a world or a land in Disney World or Disneyland, an area with like an established IP, something that's like maybe going to draw people for years to come? Because usually, let's go back to the example of like Cars Land at Disneyland, right? Saratoga Springs. Like the Cars, like there was Cars 1, there's Cars 2, we got a Cars 3 coming out, but like it's a big animated hit. They sold cars and toys, and I mean, our kids are sleeping in like, Lightning McQueen pajamas. Like it's a big IP. I don't feel that Avatar is that big IP, and so I'm just curious as to why they chose that. Is it just for the visual effects? I mean, and what they can do?
That's kind of what I think, is because I think the biggest thing about the movie, why so many people loved it, is because it had this amazing look to it. They created this whole world that was just so beautiful, and it looked amazing, and it was incredible and immersive and all that kind of a thing. And that's basically what this land is. I like I said, people who didn't really care about the movie think this land is amazing. And I think that's kind of, in my opinion, probably why they kind of did that, because they can create an actual world that is different than, it's not Disney-fied, like, really, in any way. You're not going to find Mickey Mouse merchandise there. You're not going to find anything Disney-related in this Pandora area, which is interesting because you can't really find that anywhere else in Disney World or Disneyland. But, yeah, I think it's just the look, because they could create that whole world. And here's the thing is, like so many people have said, if they've done such an amazing job on something that's based on like one movie that's kind of forgotten after a few years, and it's so incredible and people are so kind of amped about it, like think of how amazing and incredible Star Wars Land is going to be. Like the new additions to Disneyland and Disney World. Like they can really rock some amazing stuff with that.
We may be moving to Star Wars Land. Like I'm going to find a way to set up permanent residence. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like there's so
like those
many
guys
cool
who like
things.
hide out like in an IKEA overnight. You're like in a hideout in there.
Right. Here's the thing, Britta and Steve, and I'm going to put this now. I try not to be super negative on things, even if I'm really against them, because, let's try to give everyone some credit, and people are working hard and going to do their best. I think the next Avatar movie and the other sequels coming after it are going to be horrible bombs. I think the only reason that movie did big money was because everyone wanted to see the technical side of it. And unless James Cameron has got some like magic pixie dust again to do something that no one's ever seen, if the special effects and the visuals are similar to what we're seeing in other big budget movies right now, or, close to how it looked in Avatar when they did that, because obviously it's got to be the kind of same world or whatever, no one's going to care. The visuals and the tech side of it, that conversation is going to be dead. So the story's going to have to live on its own. It's going to have to be a freaking compelling story that people want to hear and see again and again. Otherwise, it's going to be a massive bomb. That's my prediction. And then what happens with like this Disney, this Pandora Land? Then they got this huge land they've invested all this money in with new movies on the way. And if no one's going and seeing the new movies, is that going to hurt attendance?
I don't really think so, because apparently the big ride that they have there is so amazing. People will go just for that. Like, it sounds incredible. It's completely different from anything else you'll find at Disneyland or Disney World.
So what Britta's saying is, irrespective of the movie, the story, everything else, that the Pandora world is so spectacularly visually that it'll draw people. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays.
That's what I think. And people who are fans of Disneyland and Disney World, like, they're still gonna go. They're gonna go. They're gonna enjoy this.
Bring back Captain EO. I'm just saying.
Yeah, right. Amen to that.
I know. Oh man.
All right.
Very cool. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, speaking of I don't know what we're speaking of. So we've talked about some some sequels and some reboots and all the rest, and I feel like our childhood, and we talked about this last week or a few weeks ago, I can't remember. Time flies. Is our childhood is being rebooted, right? Everything from Footloose to Karate Kid to everything else. Well, there's a new Top Gun. It's a Top Gun sequel. They didn't want to call it Top Gun 2, so recently Tom Cruise revealed that the sequel's title is actually going to be Top Gun Maverick, and he's going to be in it. And yeah.
I would hope he's going to be in it if they're like, Top Gun, Goose. Wait a minute. Didn't he die in the first one?
Right?
Son of Goose.
Guys! Son of Goose.
It's just a flesh son of Goose. Brita, was that you?
Yeah. Is that the third time in our marriage I've been purposely funny?
I think so. That was awesome.
Number 3 in 8 years. Here I go.
Maverick, son of Goose.
That's awesome.
Sorry, Steve.
And so, so Tom Cruise, he talked of the film and said that it's going to have the same tone as the first one. It's going to be a competition film. And what was funny, I thought, from the article that I read about it, was that Val Kilmer took to Instagram to express his interest in reprising his role as Iceman. And I thought kind of what he said was a little needy, kind of like beggy, kind of. Anyway, he said, "I'm ready, Tom. Still got my Top Gun plaque. Still got the moves. Still got it. Come on." Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Please let me in. Let me play too.
Yeah, exactly. So I just watched a film. It's not a new film. It was just something on Netflix that I walked into, and Carrie had it on. I'm like, I'll sit down. It was Deja Vu with Denzel Washington. You guys remember that movie?
Yeah, I think so. That's an older movie now.
It is. It's an older movie. But Val Kilmer's in it as he plays a police officer, and Denzel's go back in time to stop this bomb. And the guy that was in Frequency plays like the terrorist in this movie. He's like a domestic terrorist. Anyway, Val Kilmer was, needless to say, large and in charge. And I thought, if that was what he looked like, I don't know, 10 years ago, I doubt that time has been kind. And
I've seen pictures. His weight fluctuates.
Yeah, he's probably not in the exactly like the volleyball scene physique, I would imagine, anymore. Playing with the boys at Dunkin' Donuts. So, I don't know where that came.
I really, Steve, we've talked about
and I like Val Kilmer. I like The Saint. I liked it.
You know how we've talked about the honest movie trailers before? Like where they kind of like mock a movie and they talk about like what's really there. If you haven't yet, go watch the honest trailer for Top Gun. It is well worth the 5 minutes or whatever it is. It is so
This
funny.
isn't Top Gun. This isn't Top Gun Maverick. This is just the regular Top Gun.
Yes.
The original.
The honest trailers for the original Top Gun.
I usually have like a to-do list after our podcast, so I will write this down. Okay, so
all right, is that all you have on Mr. Val Kilmer's begging to get part of Top Gun Iceman, son of Goose?
Son of Goose. Oh, yes. That's all I got.
Okay. Man, I do not want to follow that up right now. That's just too funny. The Game of Thrones is coming back to TV in July. Everyone knows that. The current season's coming back. However, they've just announced, like within the last week, that the creators and showrunners are not going to be involved in the spin-off series that they're talking about making. That we talked about before. George R.R. Martin was talking about the spin-off sequel that's going to happen. They're not going to be a part of that. They also said that it's possible that we may have to wait like a year or a year and a half for the last season of Game of Thrones to hit HBO. So I don't know why they're saying, I mean, each season's like gotten pushed back a little bit, and I get that for production, but they're kind of shortening up the number of episodes in a season this season. It was usually 10, and I believe now it's going to be like 8, maybe 7 or 8. And so I don't know if this is indicative of they have to wait for something, or they're trying to let one of the actors age up a bit more so they can make it more believable, or maybe they need a certain character, but that character is like contractually tied into something else for a little bit, so they're trying to move stuff around and give time to make things happen. I don't know what that really is indicative of, but it is interesting that they're already talking about having to push back the final season before this season's actually aired yet. So, for those of you that are hardcore Game of Thrones fans, you've read this series, A Song of Ice and Fire, up through the first 5 books, and you're waiting for the next one, we may be waiting even longer for the TV show to come back between seasons. So, just a heads up. Best of luck with that.
Right.
Seems like you're always waiting for George R. R. Martin to do something.
Yeah, except this, I don't think is really him in this case.
That's true.
And I do know, and I will say this, that he has actively been not going to like Comic-Cons and stuff like that and appearances this last year, because he's really trying to get the writing done on his 6th book in the series. So, anyway, that's all I got there, Steve.
Nice. One thing that I also wanted to talk about was I saw an article. I don't know if you guys saw this, but there have been hints and allegations and little leaks here and there that Josh Gad of the Beauty and the Beast variety was said to have tweeted on June 1st that he kind of teased about his possible participation in the upcoming playing Penguin, an upcoming DC movie. He tweeted a photo of himself at DC Entertainment offices with holding like a Batman cover of the Penguin and standing alongside the DC film bosses Jeff Johns and John Berg. And the caption said, "Nothing to see here. Move along. Nothing to see here." So
right, that seems a little like intentional leaky.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like cheesy leaky, like a little like kitschy, like kind of, here this is, but I'm not going to say anything. And then he's been asked about it as well. I think he was asked about it on MTV, and he was like, no, we're just having fun. There's nothing there. I promise. Just putting some things out there. Maybe. Could be. Right. Yeah, It almost reminds me of that scene with Ben Stiller in Dodgeball, when he's like, hey, how you doing? I got some chains in the back. I'm just kidding, but I got them.
Right.
But no, I'm just kidding. But you want to see him? I got him. So anyway, I don't know. What any thoughts? I haven't seen Beauty and the Beast, but I assume that he was fair to moderate in that. He was good, and obviously everybody liked him as Olaf. Britta, any thoughts as to if he would be good as the Penguin?
I can totally see him as Penguin. I guess it depends on how cheesy they go with the Penguin, but I think either way he can kind of... I don't know. I could totally see him filling that role for sure.
I'm telling you, in my mind, Burgess Meredith is the Penguin.
I agree. Well, so you've got Burgess Meredith, who's kind of like in the middle of the road. Then you've got Danny DeVito, which is like eating raw fish.
That was creepy.
See that. That was creepy, right?
Yeah.
and like hitting on young girls, and it was just not good.
Creepy.
So maybe he's a nice mix of like, if they have like a song that he could sing while the Penguin.
Does he have to sing in every role he does now?
Absolutely.
How does that song
Josh Gad,
go?
you are contractually obligated to sing a song in every movie.
This bird's gonna fly through the air like a bird. And I don't know.
My kids sing a song about penguins waddling all the time, so he could do that.
Okay.
That'll work.
Little happy feet. Happy feet action. Morgan Freeman. So that was just a little something I saw, and I thought he'd be good. I've seen him in some things. He's a talented actor.
So, but I think this is the leak for the upcoming Batman movie with Ben Affleck. So that would be a strong hint that we're gonna be seeing the Penguin as the villain in this movie. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Villain in
now,
the movie?
that's true, Britta. He may not be the only villain.
Usually there's like 10.
I took it at face value that there was nothing to see here, so I don't think that's going to happen.
Right. I mean, he tweeted it, right?
I believe everything I see on the internet.
As you should.
Smart man.
As you should.
Yeah, so no, you hope though that it doesn't get to the point where they've got like the Penguin and the Riddler and Poison Ivy's come in and Catwoman's here and like, I don't like it when that happens. You know, give me one or two maybe.
Gets a little convoluted.
I like the one, like doing one and then maybe like teasing like the turn from like a normal person to a villain, setting up for like a future movie. I like that
they did with
kind of
Two-Face
stuff.
in Batman Returns. What was it? You know, when Harvey Dent.
Yeah. That's The Dark Knight.
Right. That was good.
Right, because like he was Harvey Dent that whole movie, and then right at the very end, like that they showed him, and it's like, okay, nope. Now we've got Two-Face, and you know he kind of like lost his mind because of his girlfriend, and you know But like you only see him as like, you know, that kind of happens right towards the end of that film. I just wish that when they did The Dark Knight Rises, he would have had a bigger role, maybe, because it seemed like he was already kind of
he was a really interesting character.
Of course, though, if I recall, though, didn't they end up killing him at the end of The Dark Knight?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that's why. Yeah, because I was like, wait a minute. I'm like, there was a
they
reason
killed him.
we
That's
didn't
why they
see
didn't bring him
him
back.
Okay,
it was like really short-lived.
If Goose can come back, freaking Harvey Dent can come back. Okay,
right? Son of Goose.
Son of Dent.
Son of Dent. Yeah, no, just take me a minute to refresh my memory a little bit. Yeah, that he dies at the end of that movie, and I mean, you could have had
it was pretty quick. They could have saved it. They could have just had him turn and then kind of hide it and then bring him back in the next one and make it a bigger story, which I think would have been. I would have preferred that because I thought it was just too quick of a switch for watching the whole movie and then have him flip and then die.
And I always give a little bit of leeway because I understand the death of Heath Ledger, you know, had altered some things in that movie a little bit and definitely altered what the next movie was going to be. And so, you know, if it was something like that because of that reason it accelerated it, I can cut some slack there. But we'll see.
Yep. Do you, Britta, or you, Spencer, have anything else in Rebel Intelligence?
I do.
Is it a light night?
I've got one more thing. Today was the big to-do in California with Apple. They had their, I think what they call like the Worldwide Developers Conference. Typically, this is a big deal where like they bring in just like software developers, they show off the new OS, and they give them kind of like a sneak peek of like, here's the new stuff software-wise, so you can start developing for us and doing stuff. Well, this year they actually showed off some hardware, and they showed a new MacBook lineup that they're kind of refreshing. Let's be honest, who really cares at this point, because it's just another MacBook. It's going to have, you know, a better processor, a little more RAM, a little more memory. It's going to have more pixels, but it's still going to be a MacBook. I mean, I don't think it's that big of a change from the last. It's just a refresh. A bump in some specs. It's a new one. They showed off OS 11, which is going to be their new operating system they're going to switch over to. Okay, that's fine. You know, it's a new OS. What is of interest, though, this is the big hardware piece that they talked about and they showed off. Apple is now getting into the home automated speaker game, just like Amazon's Echo and the Google's Google Home. Now, Monday, today, Apple announced what they call the Home Pod. And it's the best way to describe it is it looks like a cylinder with rounded edges at the top and the bottom, because, you know, they got to make it look, and it's kind of like that real fine mesh that kind of goes around speakers. Brita, it looks like the mesh around my Google Home. Right. Except it kind of goes around the whole thing. And so it just kind of looks like this big pill, sort of, like a kind of a squatty fat pill. And first of all, I hate the name HomePod. It's like you can't get past the iPod and then the iPod, pad, and then, you know, AirPods for like the little whatever, the wireless ear. Like they just kind of can't seem to get away from that naming scheme. So they call this the HomePod. But it's going to be working with Siri, and you can, you know, talk to it and it'll play music from your iTunes and it'll do scheduling. Listen, they're late to the game. There's other companies that are doing this. they're gonna sell these things, but the price point's like $350, and like the Google Home sells for like 120, 125 maybe. The Amazon Echo I think sells for like 99 to 130, somewhere in that range. So like those two are like competitively priced. This one's gonna sell for like $350. So yeah, it's overpriced. Now, the really funny thing that like they show this off, everyone kind of cheered and clapped that was there, and then they started showing some pictures of this thing, and it only took the internet a few minutes to do what the internet does, and they went
tear
nuts.
It apart.
Well, here's the thing, Steve. If you look at like a top-down view of this HomePod, it looks circular, and it's got kind of a glowing light in the middle of it. And people immediately started using the picture of the HAL 9000 computer, which is circular with red, and it's got the kind of the big red dot in the middle from the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. And
right.
Everyone's like, look at it. And like, if you look at the side by side, it does kind of look like the HAL 9000 computer, which
really?
is really funny if you know that like when Siri first came out, you could actually ask Siri stuff like, you could say something like, I'm trying to remember what it is. Like you could ask it like things like open the pod bay doors, which was right. It's like open the pod bay doors, Hal, from the movie. And Siri sometimes would respond with stuff like, we intelligent agents will never live that down, apparently. Or sometimes Siri would say, I'm sorry, your name. I'm afraid I can't do that. Which is kind of funny because the point of that film was that, the main character realizes the robot's trying to kill him. And now we're talking to, a non-murderous AI in the form of Siri.
We know of.
Right, that we know of, right? At least for now. So it's just so funny that, like, Siri even kind of has done, has kind of, mocked that, HAL 9000. But now if you look at this dang thing, it kind of looks like the HAL 9000. It's weird. People pointed it out on the internet and people were making fun of it and laughing. And I got a kick out of that because I just kind of find like the irony of that pretty spot on.
Well, we shall see if people start dying.
Right. Open the pod bay doors. What? No, I'm just trying to listen to my playlist.
Only time will tell. Well, very cool. Very cool. Always cool. Have you guys ever seen, just on a small side note before we get into the main event, have you ever seen the new Apple headquarters that they're building out in Northern California in Silicon Valley?
I haven't yet.
No.
It is absolutely amazing. It looks, it doesn't look like it is a spaceship. Like, it is a circular building, has an interior courtyard. It has more glass in it than, like, it has some records, I'm sure.
Skynet.
This, that, and the other. Yeah, seriously, if you look up Apple headquarters and look at some images, it is like nothing you've ever seen before. It's amazing. So take a look. So that's your to-do list. Mine is the honest trailer for Top Gun, and yours is to take a look.
I'm looking it up right now.
New Apple headquarters.
Dude.
Britta's looking it up.
Yeah, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, it could
That's
take
cool.
off. That thing starts spinning,
real.
and they gone.
That's like something
There you
you
go.
see in every sci-fi movie ever, is something similar to that, for real.
No. It's
That's
amazing.
crazy.
I wonder if they had to build it in that shape because there's some sort of like device that spins to help keep the
It's a particle accelerator,
That's
Spencer.
exactly what I was going to say.
the frozen corpse of Steve Jobs perfectly preserved. So when we reach that flashpoint or that moment of a singularity, he can come back and then wear his turtleneck and tell us all the cool stuff that's coming up. Maybe.
That's right.
Maybe. Sorry, I'm really not trying to mock the dead here. My bad.
Jeez.
A little late for that, my friend.
Okay, let's move on then. Last week, we had an excellent conversation about the upcoming Spider-Man movie. We talked about the third trailer and the international trailer. And
Right.
Steve, we had this conversation where we talked about, do you like the tech web shooters or do you like the authentic web shooters? And we got quite a lot of responses, so let's get to them. Let's start over
We know
on the...
We know the controversial issues.
Yes. Let's jump over to the emails. Let's start off with Bryce Jolly. He says,
What up, Bryce?
He says, Before I get to my comment to be read on the podcast, a few other comments that I think would be too long to read on the pod. Too bad, Bryce. Here they are. It says, Steve, the jet in the Spider-Man trailer is something akin to a Boeing C-17 mixed with an Airbus C-295 and not a B-52 as you said on the podcast. Not a big deal, but kind of. Right, also because the B-52 was like used in World War II, Steve. So, yeah. Next up, Steve.
Duly noted.
Take some notes here. He's got a few.
Thank you. I'm taking some notes.
Next up,
Are they all directed at me?
No, just these first two. It says, if you do some sort of training for the Tin Man Triathlon, which we know you didn't, then I would suggest doing what is called a brick workout 2 weeks before the actual race, which we know didn't happen. That involves riding your bike for at least 75% of the distance that you will do on the race day, and then getting off your bike and running for at least 15 minutes. It's called a brick workout because your legs will feel like bricks when you try to run. So,
okay.
If you ever decide to take on that 9-year-old, do the brick workout, Steve.
He's actually 11. I forget. He's a different son. But no, that's actually a very good recommendation. I will take that under advisement.
Okay, it says, for the actual question, or what I think was your question, because my kids had a screaming fight during the moments you started the question, I will answer it in a little differently than you both did. To me, I think that being bitten by the spider caused Peter Parker to have spidey senses, that is, manifest in quicker reflexes, as well as elevated strength, speed, and visual acumen. Those all seem attainable. Shooting webbing out of your body never seemed like a realizable consequence of being bitten, so I'm okay if the webbing comes from the suit. To me, although such an opinion is somewhat blasphemous to what most people have believed about Spider-Man forever, I would welcome that as a change. However, having stated all of that, we have to remember that Tony Stark's suit is not producing the webbing, just multiplying the possibilities of where and how. He himself asked Peter where it was coming from in Civil War, and marveled at its material properties. See what I did there? Which we did there, Bryce. He says, keep up the good work, boys. I think I'm early for this answer. Bryce, you did make it. Thank you very much. Steve,
job.
Britta, what do you think about that? Like the suit just amplifying the abilities of his already pre-built web shooters that he made? Because that is a good point.
Well, I like that. I actually that resonates with my heart and soul, Bryce Jolly. Well, and you think about it as well during the trailer, like we talked about, when he falls out and he's in front of those girls in the tent in the backyard, and his eyes are going crazy. So we can see there as well that you know the suit is also amplifying his sight. It's amplifying different parts of what has naturally been a result of the bite. So I think I like that. I think it's a good compromise.
Okay. Moving over to another email, Peter Christensen. What's up, Peter? I always enjoyed Spider-Man with his tech webs. The restraint and limitations it placed on him played well with Peter Parker's poor hustle in school and work. Also, I saw Wonder Woman last night. I enjoyed it and look forward to hearing your thoughts on it. Thanks for another great show, Peter. And then he says, P.S. Caleb Albers. You know not what you do. I give you a one-time offer to back down. No questions asked.
You've woken a sleeping giant. Oh.
So, you know, I mean, I get that. Like, it does. I must admit, the tech web shooters does give some storytelling. Like, what happens if one of them gets destroyed? Like, now Peter has to kind of figure his way out. You know, blah blah blah. Like that kind of stuff. Like, it does give other layers to the character, so to speak. So.
Well, as does Iron Man's suit. I mean, there are a lot of superheroes that are nothing. I mean, not that are nothing. Sorry, but that rely heavily on, you know, gadgets. Like,
right.
Where does he get those wonderful toys?
Yes, nice 1989 Batman poll, by the way.
You, Bob, I'm a number one, a guy.
My favorite line of the whole movie.
Right? That's the best one. He's like oddly like Chester the Molester, like rubbing his shoulders like really well. I'm like, getting a little creepy there.
I don't know why. Anyway, going over to Facebook, Caleb Albers. Gotta say, a bit surprised you two like the organic shooters. Can't say I was thrilled about that. I didn't like the organic webbing that Sam Raimi portrayed because in the movie, you never really saw Peter's scientific side. He's talking about the first 3 movies. I know he seemed to have a strong interest, but they never delved into how smart he truly was. Even when Spider-Man was first released in the Amazing Fantasy, he always had web shooters. It was only when he was taken over by Venom and got his black suit that he had what some may call an organic webbing. I like the shooters better because it consistently shows how crafty Spidey can be. Sometimes he doesn't always have webs, or one gets broken in battle. In the end, he relies on himself and his quick wit to beat the bad guy, even when his webs aren't working. So, that's a very well thought out response, and I will accept that and award 2 points.
So question.
Yes.
Question on this, because I don't really know much about this, and honestly, I kind of forget which Spider-Man has... Don't say what.
Careful now.
I thought you were going to say, I thought you were going to say, I don't know and I don't care.
I just professed how much I love you. Don't make me regret that.
Oh, no.
No, but here's my thought. Like, I forget, I just don't remember which Spider-Man has which, the mechanical, and which one has
You're talking about
organic.
Movie-wise?
Yeah. So, but my question is like, and maybe I'm just too logical about these things sometimes, because I haven't read the comic book, so don't hate me, everybody. But, like, if he's making the webs himself, right? He makes the mechanical shooter thing, and he has to make the webs himself. Isn't he, like, constantly having to, like, acquire resources to make this stuff that has this amazing strength and stuff? And wouldn't he be constantly just like making webs all the time and never have time to do anything else?
That's what Aunt May does. She stays at home and sews.
Sews webs.
Sew, old woman, sew.
So like the wind. I mean, Britta, you do make a point, and I'm trying to remember if it was in the Amazing Spider-Man movie with Andrew Garfield, or if it was in Civil War. It was probably Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield. It shows that like Oscorp was making this like super strength tensile thread, and like he basically took that and like reverse engineered it and made his own version that was going to work, and like it compacted in these little tiny capsules, but it was like going to provide tons and tons and tons of webbing for him. So basically, he was going to make a big batch once and then be set for probably a few years. That's my guess. So
that fits comic books. I can
you can go with anything. Yeah.
Believe that. Yeah.
As I say, they just write away their little plot foibles.
Going back to Facebook one more time, Caleb Albers also had a PS, so to speak. He says, also as a quick note, I was thinking of my newfound rivalry with Peter Christensen to be more of a bit of a witty banter, not full-blown cage match. Maybe more of the emotional equivalent of Batman v Superman. Fight to prove a point, but end up with a friendship based on common interest. So...
You said my mother's name!
Martha!
That's gonna be...
Martha! Why did you say that, Martha? Anyway, so
Peter Christensen, what's your mom's name? That's all we need to know for this fight.
If Peter's mom's name is Martha, look out, then I'm in trouble.
I don't think it is, but
I'll find out next week. He'll let us know.
We'll see.
Let's go back over to Twitter real quick and finish this up. So I asked the question on Twitter as well, and Eric Green at the Art of Bacon says tech web shooters. That organic stuff is nasty gross. Just thinking about it. Walking into a fresh spider web is like, yeah, just let that sink in. That just sounds nasty. Geeky Nerd at dspin67 says, I'm old school. Organic, of course. Chris at breadfan35, what's up, Chris? Says, I think it adds to the mutated superhero theme when it's organic, so I like that better, but it's not make or break for me. So I'm okay with that. I mean, listen, I think...
Wait,
I think everyone.
And what was his handle, by the way?
At breadfan35.
I like bread as well.
Right. So a funny story is he's actually a huge Metallica fan, and there's a song called Bread on the first album, and that's what that is. But everyone does misconstrue that his handle means he's just like a big fan of carbs and loves bread.
I was going to say, I was talking about the
bread,
enriched white bleached flour, right? Sliced to perfection.
He's like sourdough fan 35 says.
No, man, sourdough was a prison that I stayed
Marbled
at for about 3 months when I was marbled rye, pumpernickel.
Right. Well, thank you so much to our super friends for answering the question of the week.
Absolutely.
It was a lot of fun reading the answers, and honestly, just seeing like kind of the thought that people put into why they liked one versus the other, and some really like well thought out stuff. So thank you so much. We appreciate the interaction. We love interacting with our super friends, which every week we're going to ask a question. You can respond back to us on Twitter at ForwardOfNerd. You can reach us by Gmail like Bryce and Peter did this week at forwardofnerd@gmail.com, or Facebook, facebook.com/forwardofnerd. Now, Steve, we've talked about this. We talk about it every week, but the Fortress of Nerditude is always growing. We've always got more room, though. We want more super friends to be able to find us so they can come hang out, kick up their feet, and relax with us. How can our current super friends find more super friends?
They can rate us on iTunes so we can climb up the ranks, and the Fortress of Nerditude can be easier to find than a thematic plot line in the new Pandora world.
Ah, yes, very well done. Very well done. Okay, so Steve, Britta, it is our movie club week, and we have assembled here to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now, before we start this conversation, I want to preface this. We're going to keep it spoiler-free until towards the end, then we will give you plenty of warning, and then we will talk about the plot and some spoilery things. So if you haven't seen it yet, you can listen to the first part. We got your back. We don't want to ruin anything for you. But when we get to the end, we'll give you plenty of warning. So that being said, let's talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And let's
get into it.
I know the first thing that everyone I've talked to has asked me about what I thought about it or wanted to talk about, and that is the soundtrack in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 as good as the first one? Everyone wants to talk about the music first, which I find really interesting because the first one was such a great movie on its own, but that soundtrack was amazing. Like people just like it caught on with a lot of people. So soundtrack. Britta, what is your take? Is the soundtrack good, better, or what? Or not as good?
Okay, so I have mixed feelings about the soundtrack, honestly. I feel like there were some moments that had just awesome songs that I freaking love, and they were like at perfect moments that just really set the tone for what was happening in the movie, and I really loved it. But I also felt like there were a few maybe deeper cuts that people won't be as familiar with that are great, but I don't know, there was just a couple of times where I felt like, I don't really know this song, and, not that that's a bad thing, but the first one, the music was just, it felt so iconic, and it just fit with the whole movie that I feel like there was a couple times where it kind of fell down just a little bit for me. Like, it just wasn't as, I don't even know what the word is. I don't know, I just didn't love it as much in a few parts, but the parts that did were awesome.
Okay, Steve.
Yeah, I was probably the same. I mean, when you look at the first movie's track, I mean, you've got Hooked on a Feeling, you've got some David Bowie in there. I don't know, Three Dog Night. I don't know. I think that the first definitely kind of has it up by a leg, and I love the first scene in Guardians of the Galaxy, the first show, when Chris Pratt is dancing, before he steals the orb.
First time you see Star-Lord.
The first time, yeah, Star-Lord.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that the second was good, but I agree with Britta, not as memorable.
So here's
for me, not as recognizable.
So here's what I thought, because I really enjoyed the soundtrack, and I'm not talking about just like the orchestral music that was written, but I'm talking about the actual the big songs that were used. I found that I really enjoyed the music. Like, I thought they made some really strong picks, and in some cases the music like helped drive home the narrative of the story and some of the story plot, which we won't talk about till the very end. Really like tied into a few of the songs. So like it was really good that they got permission to use those songs. Otherwise they would have had to rewrite a whole bunch of dialogue.
Right.
But
For sure.
that being said, Brita, I agree with your assessment. Like, there were some good songs, there were some memorable songs from the second one, but not as many. And I'm looking at the list trying to compare them, and I think that the difference is I actually love all the music in the second movie. I think it's great on its own. Mm-hmm. The problem is, as Steve kind of pointed out, the first soundtrack from the first movie had great music, but it was also like really kind of like catchy, well-known, like a lot of bigger, well-known stuff. Like Hooked on a Feeling by Blue Suede obviously is a very well-known song. Spirit in the Sky by Norman Greenbaum is a big one. They used Moon Age Daydream, David Bowie, although there's a David Bowie, there's David Bowie in this one, and he's like not in the other one. I kind of was hoping they were going to. But then they used like I Want You Back by the Jackson 5. Highly recognizable. They also used the Pina Colada song. It's actually called Escape. But they used the Pina Colada song, which everyone knows. And then, of course, they finished that movie off with Ain't No Mountain High Enough.
Ain't no mountain high
Marvin
enough.
Gaye and Tammy Terrell. So, like, those ones, like, are great songs, but they're very catchy. They're very well-known songs. And I started looking at the list from the second movie, and I went, Mr. Blue Sky by Electric Light Orchestra, and probably, Fox on the Run by Sweet, and maybe Brandy, You're a Fine Girl.
That's fairly
by,
well known.
by Looking Glass, and then I'd probably say Surrender by Cheap Trick. Like, those are probably the more well-known, but...
I would also throw in The Chain by Fleetwood Mac. That's...
Oh, yeah. Sorry, yeah, the Chain, Fleetwood Mac.
And that was
Mac,
probably one of my favorites from the whole movie.
But I'd say, I'd probably say like The
that.
Chain, Fleetwood Mac, or Surrender by Cheap Trick are probably like the two most recognizable for like the majority of the audience that's going to go see it. But like from the first movie, like obviously like Ain't No Mountain High Enough is probably like the big one, followed by like I Want You Back by the Jackson 5, Pina Colada song, Hooked on a Feeling. Like it just felt like there was more of them. Now, I did read something though that James Gunn, who was the director, said that he intentionally wanted to have some deep cuts, some stuff that wasn't going to be well known, like the song Lakeshore Drive by, I think it's Aloyda Haynes Jeremiah. Like that song's actually written by like someone who was like only kind of really big in the Midwest back during kind of like the late 70s and early 80s. And so like that song just does not get a lot of play anywhere. But he grew up in that area at that time, and so like that was big for him. So like that's a deep cut that he wanted to include, and so I kind of like the fact that he did stuff like that, right? I mean, that would be like the equivalent of like people including, the track "Bread" by Metallica on something. Not a lot of people would know it except for Chris McCracken. So good to him,
right? It's kind of cool as well as I just looked this up, but by September 2000, so you're 14, Guardians of the Galaxy Awesome Mix Volume 1 was the second best-selling soundtrack album in the U.S. after Frozen.
Right.
Isn't that hilarious? And they said actually a good portion of them actually came through cassette sales.
That is
Isn't that awesome?
That is really cool.
They go to like retro.
That's magnificent.
So
love it.
So yeah, so I think I think we're all kind of the same opinion. Like the music was really good, but it's not going to stand out and be as memorable as the first one.
Right.
Not that it's bad. Now,
no, because it still fits so great with the movie. Like there were just some amazing scenes, and I was just thinking, I just saw on the list that Come a Little Bit Closer, and I've loved that song for a long time. And like that scene with that song was just, I don't know, like they just juxtapose things so great. I just love it. So there's some really great things I think they do with the soundtrack. But yeah, there's just some less recognizable songs, and hopefully it'll be a really popular soundtrack as well, and people will get to know some of these songs better because, there's some awesome stuff on here, but not going to be the big hit or like super well-known songs like on the first one.
Well, and I think why the music was such a kind of a star of the show and really kind of made a name for itself and kind of set this movie apart from other movies. I mean, I guess you could do superhero movie and have all 80s music, whatnot. But it was recognizable. It was nostalgic for a lot of people. It was, it had cultural reference points, but it also, helped with the storytelling, right? It basically tied, Quill to Earth and kind of made that bridge that he was a guy really from Earth, just a normal guy from Earth, listening to his Walkman, but he was in this great, big outer space adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do feel that like that still kind of felt true and authentic in this movie too. I mean, because it was kind of the same thing. Like it does really. You're right. It's like an anchor point to like, yes, I'm having this massive adventure out in outer space and I'm doing all this stuff, but I'm just a kid from Earth who's still kind of stuck back in the late 70s, early 80s type of mentality, right? As far as like when he was a kid. So
yeah.
So let's talk just briefly kind of about the synopsis of this movie. This movie picks up pretty much just maybe a few months after where the first movie ends. We've got all the cast of characters is back. You've got Peter Quill as Star-Lord. You got Gamora. You got Drax. You got Rocket. And of course you got Baby Groot because Groot sacrificed, like this is not a spoiler of this movie, but the first one sacrifices himself to save everyone at the end of the first movie, and then you get the little cute post credit where he's dancing around and singing.
It'd be dancing Elmo basically.
Right. So everyone's back in this Guardians of the Galaxy. Now we do see some new people are going to be introduced in this movie, but basically the whole idea of like. And they kind of alluded to this in the first movie, like who Peter Quill's father is basically kind of the whole journey in this movie. Like Peter's trying to find out who his father is. And the movie really, and we won't go into it a ton, but really hits on this theme of family throughout the movie. And I really enjoy movies, and I really enjoy the Marvel Cinematic Universe that they try to take a movie and they try to tell the story that they're going to tell with their characters. So like whether it's, Captain America in The Winter Soldier, it's telling a Captain America story, right? But really at the heart of that movie was kind of felt like a 1970s kind of like spy, kind of thriller movie, but, brought forward a little bit, but kind of had that feel. Whereas like, the first Iron Man movie was obviously a coming of age story. And we kind of talked about this before, like kind of like the overarching stories that they're trying to tell.
Right.
But it would be a good story if you removed the superhero from it and it was just a normal person, right? So in this movie, it's kind of the same thing. Like the overarching story isn't like, hey, this is how the group came together and, defended the galaxy, because that was the first movie. But this one was more of like the exploring the interpersonal relationships between some of the characters that are in the Guardians of the Galaxy in that group. And then also kind of like their family relations. And definitely the relationship between Peter and his father is deeply explored in this movie. But that also kind of like you see the parallels between some of the other characters and like their family, right? And the fact that the Guardians of the Galaxy, the group itself, has kind of become a family, so to speak. So
yeah. Well, and you see that I think in a lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of these types of movies. I mean, Iron Man, his if you took the superhero out, he would be a guy that works a lot, that doesn't have time for love and whatnot, and Peter Parker, and he lost his parents and lost his uncle and all the rest of it. You're right. It does kind of distill down to families. Everything else is kind of just CGI popcorn for your eyes.
Right.
But it really comes down to, family and relationships.
What do you think, Britta?
Yeah, I totally agree. That was definitely very prevalent in this film. I think it was, just a really big focus, and I think that's kind of what made this film more emotional on a different level than the first one. I feel like, you kind of get a little bit more invested in this one, I feel like, than in the first one, just because of some things that happen and the plots involving family and that kind of thing. So, and now that you know these characters, they're not setting it up anymore.
Right.
They're not introducing you to characters. So now you've already got this idea and this feeling for these characters, and you want to make sure, they stay together, or, they remain a family, or whatever it is. And, I think this film kind of focuses more on that, and I kind of really like that aspect of it.
I really like the fact that the director, James Gunn, really just like decided, like, I'm going to explore this dynamic, right? This kind of family dynamic, because if you look at it, kind of, we're making a little bit of speculation here, but we know at some point Guardians of the Galaxy are going to interact with, like, the Avengers, with the Infinity War, because we know, they had a stone, an Infinity Stone in the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and that the Collector was collecting things, and it looked like he was probably going to have a few of those. And we kind of alluded to that a little bit when we talked about Thor Ragnarok, right, Steve? So that we're looking into that. But what I like about this movie, though, is, like, they focused on the kind of the family aspect, and it wasn't so heavy on the big overarching story in the MCU with Thanos and the Infinity Stones. Because what's going to happen is we're going to get a third Guardians of the Galaxy movie that's going to happen after the Infinity War stuff. And so it'll be interesting to see, like, now since, we've kind of told this story about, like, family and kind of some of the relationships between these characters, and then they're going to have this other big event that's going to go on, like, where are they going to go from here storytelling wise? And I think the way they've done this is that they're going to set it up so, like, we're going to be emotionally invested in these characters very deeply. So when the next movie comes out, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, we're going to willingly plunk down our, $15 at the movie theater and go see this thing.
Right, and I think it's going to be really interesting having the Guardians of the Galaxy and the Avengers together in one movie, because you can see how they're such different groups. Because the Guardians do consider themselves more of a family and are closer, and it's not like how the Avengers is basically like a lot of separate superheroes, Thor and Hulk and Iron Man, who are kind of all off doing their own thing, but then they come together to help out, where these guys are like, they are together. They are a team first and foremost. They're not, just like one person doing their own thing. They work together really well. And so I think that maybe will be kind of an interesting dynamic to see the difference between the two of them and how they end up coming together.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
That will be interesting to see. Yeah. And it's funny as well when you think about talking about kind of family issues or daddy issues or whatever. You've got Gamora and her sister. What is it, Nebula?
Nebula, yeah.
And their abusive uprising with upbringing with Thanos. We've got Drax, who's lost his family. We have obviously Star-Lord, who's lost his family. So you've got all these different irrespective family issues that have all kind of brought them together as a family unit, they found one another.
Right, and Rocket's created in a lab, so he doesn't have a family.
Never had a family.
Never had one to begin with.
That's right.
And then we really don't know about Groot, because all we hear is, I am Groot. Right.
Imagine he's, formed from a redwood and a pine tree.
Britta, I'm just thinking about this. Anytime now I really don't have an answer for you, or for the kids, or if I get put on the hot seat and I know that I'm going to incriminate myself in anything I'm going to say, I think I'm going to go with, I am Groot.
But you realize that means I can interpret it however I want.
But then I can just respond back, I am Groot.
Well, I'll just keep answering for you then.
When you're sitting on the stand for, like, first-degree murder, and they're like,
we're
Mr.
going to go
Stapleton,
on
where were
another
you?
trip to California? Great, we're going to leave next week. Sounds awesome.
I am Groot.
Can't wait to take kids back to Disneyland.
So do we want to kind of talk maybe about how this, the movie opens with Kurt Russell and kind of how that plays into the story?
Sure. I think that's a safe thing, because if you've seen anything or you've seen the previews, Kurt Russell's in this movie, right?
Right.
Kurt Russell, and this has been like confirmed, like a year or more before the movie came out, that Kurt Russell was going to be in this, and that he was going to be Peter Quill's father, Star-Lord's father. And his character's name is Ego. And
fitting.
Right?
Yes, very fitting name.
Very, very, very fitting. So Peter does meet his father in this film, and the Peter's storyline does take quite a bit of the movie, like trying to figure out like how he fits in with his father and like, why his father abandoned him and his mother. And obviously like the character of Peter's coming from a place of hurt, right? Because he was a boy of maybe like 8 years of age. And now he's coming to grips with, seeing his father for the first time that he can remember. And so, or at least, no, sorry, he was 8 when he lost his mother, but he's like really never knew his father, like only got stories of kind of like who his father was. And
his mom fell in love with a spaceman.
Right. So it's going to be a big deal emotionally for him. Like, how does he reconcile this, with meeting your father for the first time? And I think that people who maybe have gone through this in their own personal life are going to have a greater insight than I'm going to have, obviously, because I've not lived that experience. But from watching it and seeing people and, and knowing friends that have kind of gone through similar things where like their father hasn't been a part of their life all the time, or like they never knew their father, like there is a big kind of like hole for those people. And like they try to fill it with other father figures or whatever. And what would you do if you came face to face with your actual father after not seeing him ever and wondering why he abandoned your mother and him and why he wasn't there, for you when, your mother died? Those are like some heavy questions.
Right. And, you think about those that have been adopted that, at some point in their life, they're like, I just have to know. I have to know who my real family is. And they spend, the rest of their lives trying to find out the questions that, need answering. Yeah.
And so obviously that's, kind of like we were talking about family. It's kind of a big part of this film. But Kurt Russell, like, man, I love Kurt Russell as far as an actor goes. Like, he can just do so much, and I really enjoyed this character he played. I really thought he did. Like, I'm not going to go back onto all the, like, Chris Pratt and Dave Bautista, because I thought all of them were excellent in the first movie. I thought all of them were excellent in this movie. So I won't spend a lot of time there, but I really did think Kurt Russell did an amazing job. I mean, what did you guys think?
Yeah, I thought he was awesome. Like, he played the different parts of his character so well. And, I don't want to go too much into it because I don't want to give any spoilers about anything, but he just, you believe him, throughout the movie. You believe in this character and who he is and what he becomes and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's interesting, but I can't say too much about it because I feel like if I say too much, it's going to spoil stuff.
Right.
But I just thought he was great.
And if you hold off a little bit, we'll get to that here very shortly.
Yeah. It was no Big Trouble in Little China, but it was good. Okay.
Another character that really had a more prominent role in this movie was the character of Kraglin, which is played by Sean Gunn. He's kind of like the number 2 to Yondu. If you remember, Yondu is the blue guy with the fin who's got the arrow that whistles, and then it goes around and kills everyone. Sean Gunn is a great actor. Steve, you will remember him as being Kurt from Gilmore Girls. He was Kirk in Gilmore Girls.
Oh, right. That's right. Yeah. I was like, he does look really familiar.
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, the guy, like, in every episode, he's like doing something new.
Everywhere.
He wants to start Uber.
Yeah, Uber.
Yes.
Right. So, like, he was in this movie, and, like, his role had been expanded, and I thought he does such a good job, and, like, you feel for him, and like his character is believable. Like, it's not a caricature. It's not like overly done. But like, he's the second in command, and he's gonna follow Yondu and like be loyal to him to like a T, right? Like, loyal to a fault, and that's his character. So we saw more time with him, which is really good. And then they introduced, of course, a bunch of new characters. You saw in the preview, there's that girl that has like those little antenna. Her name is Mantis. She's in the movie, and the actress that played her like has like the deadpan comedy like down pat, like just does not give anything away.
She does
not
awesome.
break character, and I don't know how, but wow.
Yeah, I loved her. I loved her character, like everything about her. Like, oh my gosh, I really loved her. But can I just say, probably my favorite character of the whole movie in this one was Michael Rooker as Yondu. Like,
oh yeah,
gosh,
I thought he stole the show.
Yeah,
he like, I like just emotional in scenes with him. Like, he made me cry, he made me laugh. Like, I just felt so many emotions. Like, he to me was the standout of this movie, in my opinion. Like, he was my favorite. I loved his storyline in this movie.
Michael Rooker is an amazing actor. I mean, he's been awesome in so many different things, and he's good in all of them. Like, he can play creepy and weird. He can play like the kind of the tough man. He can play like, you know, like just a friend, someone, you know, you'd want to be friends with. He can play like emotional and vulnerable. I mean, just an amazing guy.
Yeah, no, I think he was a standout in this film. I think there were, you know, just kind of like his, I don't know, those people in your lives that are just like straight talking wisdom, right? Like anything they say, you're like, man, that could be like quotable. That's awesome. And, you know, there were a few scenes, and Britta, I think you were referring to this, you know, a few of the conversations that Rocket and Yondu have, just these like really meaningful conversations that they were kind of surprisingly touching, right? And kind of showed how they had kind of grown.
Least expected
in
characters.
Ways.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Mm-hmm. I just killed a man with a pen, and let's talk about how you came to be, son.
Yeah. Yeah, very,
so
like, I guess it kind of goes back to, like, the family thing, right? Because, like, obviously, like, Yondu and Rocket don't have family, but they're kind of, like, emotionally opening up to each other in these moments when, like, the world is not exactly doing well around them, and they're having, like, these heartfelt conversations, which is funny in and of itself because of the comedic value, but, like, but also at the heart of it, it's, like, a really touching moment. And I mean, I saw Britta. She had a little tear in her eye. She was getting a little misty.
Oh, I'm not afraid to lie. Like, this movie made me cry a couple times. Like, I got emotional in my eyes.
Sure, yeah. in my eyes, there was moisture in the eyes. I did, you know, what I really like about this movie as well, not only the music, but the way that they use just the different cinematic elements, right? I loved a lot of the juxtaposition they used where they have, you know, like Baby Groot in the beginning. He's like dancing all around while they are like slaughtering, you know, you got the tentacle-eyed thing with the
right.
And it's just like these great,
so funny,
just
it was great.
Funny juxtapositions. I loved it.
I mean, I loved that. Like, visually, like, they did a lot of really cool things. Like, Steve, that you're right. Like, that scene in the beginning was like, it's a lot of fun. Like, it's really, really funny. But, like, visually, it's like really kind of cool to see, like, there's all these like big budget explosions going on in the background, but they're kind of a little fuzzy, and like the camera's not focused in on them because the camera's focused in on little baby Groot, just
watching
like
Groot.
He's just dancing,
and he's dancing to Mr. Blue Sky,
right, and like
That's awesome.
and I did find myself like, I was like, oh yeah, there's a big fight going on in the back scene, and sometimes like whatever was going in the back scene actually was a lot of fun. Like, it was really, really funny, and it was being used as a comedic, you know, beat or two, but like, I really did just like focus in on Groot and watch him dance, and like it was just a happy moment, like a very just like pure innocence. Like, here's like a little baby or like a little kid who's like just really digging this music and like doesn't care about the world going on around him. He's just enjoying the moment.
Attention. Yeah,
that's right.
And I have to say, so like I ended up seeing this movie twice, and the second go around, that whole first opening credits scene, So, like, the first time around, you know, I was focusing on Groot and watching him and just totally entertained. The second time around, I really did just try and watch the background to see what was happening.
Right.
And, gosh, it just made me laugh. Like, it's just funny.
So, this movie, like, let's talk about the visuals. Like, some really, really amazing stuff. Like, makeup was awesome. I mean, you look at guys like Drax and Mantis and Taserface and some of these characters, like, the makeup on them obviously took a long time. So like, but it like felt believable. Like, they felt like alien races, and they went to some different places we haven't seen before, and so they were able to introduce new things. Right. But it all looked really, really good. And then on top of that, like, you see, you know, kind of like we talked about, like all the visuals and the explosions going on in the background in the very beginning, and then we see these different worlds and like traveling through space, and like just visually, like it all looked really, really, really good, but it never felt like it was fake. You know how sometimes you just watch a movie
Right.
that's like, hey, we're traveling through space, and it's like, yeah, that just looks like it was completely done with computers. And I never really got that feel in much of the movie. And there was a few key scenes, like obviously that was done with computer work. Some of the stuff with like the eyeballs, like, bugging out and doing that stuff.
Yeah.
But as far as the movie on the whole, like some of the planets we see, some of the, traveling and, some of the special effects, like looked like seriously good. Like you wouldn't think, hey, this is fake necessarily, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, I totally agree. Everything just kind of looked amazing, and it didn't, like, nothing really took you out of it to think, oh, that was a really great special effect. Like sometimes you think that, but this one, you're just in the world, so you're just invested in it, and I don't think anything really pulls you out of it at all. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Disney couldn't have made this world instead of Pandora. I'm just saying.
Right.
Hey, they're working on it.
Yeah, right.
Or something like it, hopefully.
The other thing that I really liked as well, and I thought that they did well, was I just love some of the little like references, right? Just some of the fun, like 80s references. The one that just brings to mind when Peter and Gamora are kind of flirting and whatnot, and he talks about like this unspoken bond, just like Sam and Diane from Cheers, and then like something that she totally isn't gonna understand, but I love those little nods.
Yes. Yeah, they were really the script work in this was just amazing. I mean, like the first one, like it's just really, really smart, really funny, and I think that was the big part of this movie, right? Like, and the first one as well. Like, we're telling this fantastic outer space story, and we're trying to, protect the entire galaxy. That could be really heavy, and it could be really overdone, and could seem really heavy-handed. But they do a lot of humor and a lot of like little side takes with things that really help kind of keep the movie light and like moving forward.
Right, a lot of comic relief in it. Yeah, I agree.
It doesn't get bogged down.
The literal-minded Drax is hilarious.
Right. So I'm dying to get into talking about the spoilers. So
Yeah.
let's say this. If you have not watched this movie, now would be a good time to pause The Fortress of Nerditude, run out, go see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, then come back, unclick the pause button, and listen to the rest of the podcast. So you have been warned. We are now going from spoiler-free to completely spoiler-cast. We will talk about things. 3, 2, 1. Let's do this, guys. Okay, so for me, the big thing, I've been dying to talk to you guys about this. Peter finds out, right, Ego's his father. You find out that he came back in time and that he got his mother pregnant. And then Peter's talking to him and he's trying to find out, because obviously Ego's like, I need someone else who has the ability to kind of harness my power to help spread my essence throughout the galaxy. Like, he's like a freaking virus.
Fulfill my vision.
Right. I mean, that's really what he is. He's a
Purpose.
virus trying to infect the entire universe and like take over. But then you find out, and this is the big twist that I think just like really hit me hard, that he gave Peter's mother the cancer that was going to kill her.
Right.
Because he knew that if he came back and visited her another time, like, he wouldn't be able to leave because he really truly loved her. But then he freaking gave her cancer to kill her.
Brain cancer.
Like, he just couldn't like stay away, like all the other like fathers who have abandoned their sons.
That's my baby's mama. I gotta go back.
I mean, so then like, that's just bad enough, right?
That like just turned the tide for Peter.
Yeah,
like that was it.
Like that was his breaking point. Then you realize Peter's not his only child, that he has impregnated like every race on every planet,
thousands
and thousands, and has had Yondu bring him the children to find if they had the power. And it really was only Peter was the only one that inherited, his essence, his power. And so like, you get this whole thing, like, you realize his dad killed his mother. B, his dad has impregnated and killed millions and millions of children. C, his dad was having some guy running like a child trafficking ring to bring the kids back to him. All of a sudden you're like, hey,
Before it was popular.
Yeah, right. All of a sudden you're like, hey, this guy's really kind of evil. And like, I figured somehow the dad wasn't going to be the guy Peter wanted him to be, but I didn't see child mass murderer as being the thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, didn't you feel that something was a little odd when they go there and you got all the porcelain, mannequins and he's acting things? It just kind of, something was not right.
Yeah, it seemed like it was when you go to the zoo, not the zoo, like you go to a museum and they show you like the little like figures behind the glass that show you kind of like, this is how it looked, in like 700 AD. Like it kind of felt like that. And I was like, this seems like a very kind of cleaned up version of like the history. So what are you trying to hide?
Like, why does he have that there? Like, that's what I just kept thinking. I was like, why is this already, like, is he just creating it right now for Peter? Or why has this been there? Like, it just was weird at first. And then when you come to find out that Peter's not the only kid, it's like, oh, he's had this set up to, like, talk every kid through this, to explain who he was and what we can do. And
then when they don't have the power, he murders them.
Right.
So yeah, that was a huge plot twist. And then you realize like there's this whole other storyline, right? Because now you've got the real biological father who's this horrible individual. Then you've got Yondu who kidnaps Peter as a child, is supposed to bring him to Ego, but Yondu knows what's in store for Peter. And
he realizes what's happening.
And he knows what's going to happen, and he doesn't take him. And he says the only reason he didn't turn him in was that he was small and he could fit into small places and steal stuff for them.
Good for thieving.
Yeah, good for thieving, right? But like now you have this like dichotomy of like, here's my biological father, and then here's the man that raised me. Because Yondu raised him.
Who kidnapped me, but raised me.
Right, kidnapped me, but raised me. He's like, you told me you were going to eat me. He's like, oh, I just told you that to keep you in line. He's like, I wasn't really going to eat you. He was like, I didn't know that. I was 8. Right.
Well, and you got that a little bit from the first one as well, where you definitely see that he had a soft spot, right?
Yeah.
That he was about to kill Peter, and then he's like, oh, boy, I knew you'd come around,
It's like his whole crew was constantly questioning him, like, how come Peter gets away with stuff, and how come you always let him do this, and how come you didn't kill him, and da-da-da-da, and obviously that comes into big part of this movie and why his crew kind of overthrows him and everything, but then you kind of really find out why, because he really has a love for Peter and like thinks of him as his son.
And the line right there at the very end where he's like, where Yondu says, it's like, Peter, I wasn't your father, but I raised you, boy. I was your daddy. And like that, I was like, okay,
boom!
I'm not crying. I promise. Like my father was my daddy. He raised me, but he's not here anymore. And I'm like, ooh, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Together, Spence.
Right. Hold it in. Like that was powerful. And like, it just really kind of like hit on this whole thing of like family that they were really, now admittedly, they hit this family thing a little hard throughout the movie because you had the Yondu and Rocket kind of conversation, right? You had the relationship between Gamora and Nebula. You had the Peter and Peter Quill and Ego. You had Peter Quill and Yondu. You also kind of have like Yondu and like his second in command, Kraglin, played by Sean Gunn. Like he really loves his commanders, gonna stand by him. So like it kind of hit this family thing over and over and over and over and over again. But it didn't feel super heavy-handed, at least to me.
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't think so either.
So,
like they even mentioned, Gamora was talking to Peter, and she's just like, he's like, I found my father, and you know what it's like? I don't have a family. I finally found my family, and she's just like, I thought you already had.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's why they're fighting to the death over all sorts.
So
of
stuff. What did you guys think of the cameo of none other than Sylvester Stallone?
Well, it wasn't technically a cameo because he did
really,
show up.
Not a cameo, I guess, but
like a small role.
His small role. What do you think?
So here's the thing. He was in it in a small role, but there were some other people also that were in it. in a small role. Like you had Ving Rhames was in it in a small role. Michael Rosenbaum was in it in a small role. There was a couple others, and like that whole aspect of it was like, and I had to look this up because I'm like, this sounds very familiar. These characters actually were some of like the original Guardians of the Galaxy, because in the comics it started like way back when, and then before they kind of took a big break, they didn't follow Peter Quill. They followed, Adam Warlock and some of these other characters, and they were the Guardians of the Galaxy. And so they were kind of showing us these people that were part of the Ravagers, this big kind of group that Yondu was part of, obviously, this bigger overall group. But you kind of get the impression like these guys may be more important or maybe important later on. And if they're the original Guardians of the Galaxy from the comics, like they may bring them in and have them do other stuff, or, have them be kind of like mentors or guides somehow, or like manipulating some of the things that are going to happen to our Guardians of the Galaxy. So, really cool. I liked it.
I thought it seemed very funny, though, that Sylvester Stallone didn't change his persona, his acting, his line, any delivery, anything from anything else we've ever seen him in.
Yeah, I mean,
like not one iota.
Yeah, he pretty much was John Rambo or Rocky Balboa.
Exactly.
I mean, it's Stallone.
Stallone is Stallone.
Gamora!
Right. So you've got that, right, that happens. Let's talk real quickly, like some of the after credits scenes. So you obviously have the whole thing with Stan Lee. Stan Lee makes a guest appearance in this after credits scene, and you basically see him like up in space sitting with these characters called the Watchers, and they basically like kind of watch over like the universe and all the things that are going on. And they basically, there's been this fan theory that like Stan Lee and all the little cameos he's made in all the Marvel movies, he's actually a Watcher. And they basically had him now sitting with the Watchers in this cameo, basically confirming a big, huge kind of like fan believed theory for a long time. And James Gunn came out and said, basically, yeah, that's what that is. And can kind of confirm that. Although he did come back and he said, hey, listen, I did screw up, because technically Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is supposed to take place in the timeline before Civil War. And we see, and he says, hey, I used to be a FedEx guy, it says, and so that happened in Civil War. So technically it's out of place. But Gunn just basically said, well, maybe Stan Lee's characters used a FedEx guy more than once or more than one time or something like that to try to kind of like explain it. But I mean, so there's a little bit of a continuity error there, but it was an after credits scene, and I don't think anyone's going to really nitpick that a ton per se.
Right. Well, and they did have that little minute the first time you see him doing that when they're like speeding through all the planets. They're doing all the jumps. That's the first time you see Stan Lee there, and then they do it again at the end.
Right.
So, but yeah, I really, I always enjoy this.
His cameos in the beginning, obviously, were probably just cameos, obviously.
Right.
And here they can say, oh, here's the reason why. Here's the origin story of his cameos, which is kind of a fun thing. So, yeah, I don't think anybody will fault him for that.
Also in the credits, we see the Grandmaster, which is Jeff Goldblum's character, who's in Thor Ragnarok. They show him like kind of dancing along in the end credits. And so, his character kind of, there's a connection between him and the Collector. So they basically thought it would be just kind of fun to put him in to this and, let him kind of do a little something to kind of have it in there. Because it's going to kind of show that. And I kind of liked that as well. That was fine for me. Like I was okay with that.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember like something. There was like one other. There was like 5 like after credits.
Yeah, they were like half a dozen. I couldn't keep them all straight.
Right. I'm trying to think.
I've got to go to the bathroom.
I know. It's like I just drank a huge Dr. Pepper. Overall, though, like I really thought that some of the after credits stuff, helped set up some maybe potential future stuff that's coming down the pipe. Also, just kind of added a little extra in, like if you watch the credits, like they would put like little funny names in there, and like it would say like, like lighting by I am Groot, and then like it would like
Translate.
flip and translate and show like what it was, and like that's just kind of like fun stuff. I'm glad they did, stuff like
Can
this.
I say my favorite little after credits thing was when Star-Lord goes in to Groot's room and he's a teenage Groot.
Right.
And he's
Yes.
like, what is this mess? You need to clean up. And and he's like, I am Groot. Like, he's all snotty.
Yeah, he's like, what? He's like, what? I do not sound like my father, or something like that. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So funny. I love that one.
Yeah, so really,
great.
I mean, it was a lot of fun. Gosh, the best line to me, the like comedic. I mean, there was a lot of good comedic stuff, but the whole line, like, there's the whole kind of two things. Like one where Star-Lord talks about like how cool David Hasselhoff is because
I forgot about
because
that.
there's the whole like Knight Rider was big, and then it's like you actually see like someone turn into David Hasselhoff, and so like Hasselhoff has a little cameo, which I thought was funny. But then the other thing where like right at the end when Yondu's getting ready to sacrifice himself, like he'd been talking to him, he's like, yeah, you look really cool, like Mary Poppins. He's like,
no, he's laughing at me. He's like, oh, you look like Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
And he's like, is he cool? And Star-Lord is like, he's very cool. He's like, I'm Mary Poppins, y'all.
yeah, he's like floating down, got that like umbrella. He's like, I'm Mary Poppins, y'all.
That's my favorite.
Super, super funny. Like Michael Rooker, the actor who plays Yondu, Michael Rooker went to Disneyland and got a picture with him and the person that's playing Mary Poppins in Disneyland.
Character at the park, yeah.
In the park. And so like the caption on the photo says, I'm with Mary Poppins, y'all. And it actually was supposed to be from like Mary Poppins saying that because she's with, Michael Rooker, who's Yondu. Anyway, I just really thought that was
that was my favorite part. It was so funny.
So funny.
I loved it.
Let's go to the box office, right? Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 has made like almost 800 million worldwide. This thing's a juggernaut. It's big. It's going to continue to make more money. I think it'll probably even make bigger money after Infinity War when the third one comes out, because there's going to be people that maybe, I don't know who these people are. If you're out there, tell us. But there's going to be people out there that are going to have not seen Guardians of the Galaxy because they'll be like, space, and it's not, Hulk and Iron Man. I don't know these guys.
Let's be honest, if they haven't seen it, they're probably not listening to this podcast.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Right.
So, anyway, I think it's going to make more money after that. So, the movie's been getting great reviews. I mean, all like the aggregators like Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic. I mean, it scored pretty well. Fans are loving it. I mean, just really, really. I don't really have anything bad to say about the movie. I thought overall it was a great film, and it hit all the right notes for me. It felt true to the original. I don't know, Britta, what did you think? Steve, what did you think?
Yeah, I really loved it. I think overall, it had kind of the same tone as the first one. I loved that it didn't continue on with Infinity Stones and the whole, fitting into the rest of the Marvel universe currently, that it was a little bit more separated and kind of this separate story. I think that felt really like authentic to the Guardians of the Galaxy, so I really liked that. And overall, I really love it. I wouldn't say I like it more than the first one. I just have like a love for that first movie, but I mean it's just a notch below that one. I love it. It was great.
Yeah, and I would say I was kind of going back and forth between this and do I like it more or less than the first one. The first one was obviously fresh and new and different and original, and the soundtrack was a big deal. But I think I really liked this one, being that any movie that can take me to the high highs, the low lows, the desert, the sea, the land, the different emotions. It's pretty awesome. So I think I really liked this one even a notch above the first one, and just appreciated the tender moments that were there, some great comedic lines, and then just the overall fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
So I'm definitely going to recommend it. I'll recommend it to anyone. It was a great
Ditto.
movie. So let's this, since we're talking Guardians of the Galaxy and this is kind of an ensemble cast, it's like the whole question of the week we had. Like, I like to see why people think a certain thing. So I think our question of the week would be this. If you identify with one of the characters in Guardians of the Galaxy, who would it be and why? So if you think you're like Rocket, why do you think you're like Rocket? If it's Drax, why? If it's Star-Lord. So Britta, think about this for half a second while I go over to Steve. Steve, who of the Guardians of the Galaxy would you identify with? Drax, Star-Lord, Groot, Rocket, or Gamora?
Well, Drax physique, but no, probably Chris Pratt's troublemaking swagger. I would probably say that. I mean, maybe I got some daddy issues. I don't know. No, but kind of the front man, always life of the party, center of the stage, and so I could relate to that, and I've been known to to dance to my own little tune when I get my headphones on, unbeknownst to my underwear, like Tom Cruise and Risky Business, whatever.
Sure, which we have on film, by the way. Not Risky Business. You dancing in your underwear.
I was young. I needed the work.
All right, Britta, what about you?
Oh my. Okay, so I'm gonna say I identify most with Groot. I'm gonna say, because I randomly dance to my own music all the time. People look at my office and see me just in there dancing and think I'm totally weird. And I find, at least when I'm talking to my children, I'm repeating the same thing over and over and over again. And no one understands me.
Nice. Very, very nice.
There you go.
I'd have to say...
That is awesome.
I'd have to say I'm a good mix between Star-Lord and Rocket. Because for the reasons Steve said, like, I like to be kind of the center of attention, be in the middle of the party, be kind of telling jokes and wisecracking. But then again, I'm also kind of like Rocket because I like to be a kind of a smart aleck and just like, like, what? No, I told him to go get that person's leg. It's like, what are you going to need that for? It's like, nothing. I just wanted to see if he'd do it. Like, there is that part of me that, like, I just like to mess with people just to see if I can. And sometimes I intentionally sabotage stuff like that because I find it funny. And so I'm kind of a good mix right down the middle between Rocket and Star-Lord. So we'll call me Star Rocket.
And with Groot, if it comes down to it and all of my family is in peril, I will just wrap my arms all around him and sacrifice myself to save him. There you go.
Aww.
Bam.
Very nice. So you heard who we identify with. Let's hear from you. Tell us which Guardian of the Galaxy and why you identify with. Once again, Twitter at @ForwardOfNerd. Email forwardofnerd@gmail.com or facebook.com/forwardofnerd. Thank you so much for joining us. We love hanging out with you, super friends. We're glad you come back week after week after week. Please continue to do so because you do that, and we promise we'll hold up our end. We'll continue to do this podcast with you.
And even if you don't, we'll still be here.
Right.
Just talking to ourselves.
All right, Britta, you know what? Let's have you throw this out of here. Get us out of here, Britta. Walk us on out. Play us out.
Hey, you gonna let me
Go.
talk?
Off the plank.
May the force be with
No, wait.
you. Oh, what? You messed it up!
I'm just kidding.
Oh, we're gonna have to re-record that
I'm
one.
sorry.
All right, Britta, go.
Okay, just go for it.
Here's the music, kid. Go.
May the force be with you, always.